host, Sean Lynn, in the pub for A Dram with Friends, where we talk about faith, family, food, and fun. Pull up a chair and I'll pour you a drink. Episode 30. We welcome our new friend Jim Sano to the pub. Sit back as we talk about how he's been writing books to lead men to Christ. Welcome to another episode of A Dram with Friends. We are extremely excited to have a new friend join us in the pub today, all the way from Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome, Jim Sano.
How you doing, Sean? Been looking forward to talking to you again. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
There you go. Well, we're extremely happy that you've decided to join us in the pub today, and you gave me a scouting report, so gave me a reason to open up the Four Roses here. So I got the small
I
batch
can match you,
version.
but mine's a little further down.
There you go. So a lot of people don't know exactly what a dram is, but we're not a big drink. It's actually a dram is a measurement of an eighth of an ounce, where I don't know if I get that little in a glass because that's not much. So
Get you started.
there you go. So tell our friends out there, who's Jim Sano?
Who is he? He's the guy right here talking to you. He was born a little bit north of Boston. I was born and raised in Lynn, Mass, so from your namesake. And I heard you say that you had actually been to Lynn at one point and thought you weren't in Kansas anymore. So I grew up there.
Yeah.
It's like a General Electric kind of manufacturing city, just north of Boston. My mother was Irish, Doherty, and my father was Italian. So I got to see both sides of everything that you could think about. And I had two brothers and two sisters, and just a great childhood growing up. And I've been reached my dream. I found the perfect girl, Joanne, and we had two beautiful daughters, and we've been living a little bit west of Boston since then. So I haven't traveled too far, from where I grew up, but that's kind of how I grew up. And I've been working, after I went to Boston College, I was teaching high school for a while, and I knew I wanted a family, and I couldn't afford to do that. So I went to get my MBA, and I was working in finance and pricing and high tech for 30 something years, and ended up on this surprising path of writing novels. And it's as much of a surprise to me as anyone that knew me that I ended up going this way. But I had a ton of help from the Holy Spirit in that process.
Well, and that's how I got to know you. Oh, we got a little bit of feedback here. I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully I can edit that out.
Okay.
Uh, you had made us aware of your book here. I've got the one, The Father's Son. You had sent out that, and the other one, Gus Busby, and I failed to read instructions, so I started with Gus Busby, and quite enjoyed it,
Good.
especially because I worked with youth at risk and found it very, very good insights for that dynamic of older guy, cultural differences. So I found it very engaging. And then you encouraged me to read the other one.
Yeah, the other Father Son was the first one. My wife had said you should probably start with Gus Buzzy. It's probably an easier entry to the market because of the story. I think that, like you mentioned, the mentorship, and it meant a lot to me with your experience working, with a lot of the characters that are depicted in the story. Your feedback about, it kind of hitting nail on the head and really, capturing, I think, a lot of what goes on. but the Father's Son was the first one. And I really wrote that one because as I started to learn my faith and really, I grew up Catholic and I was always going to stay Catholic. But as I dug in more to learn why the church teaches things, I just started seeing the depth and beauty of the teachings. I started to really realize what the church was. It wasn't some man made institution, but it is the body of Christ. And that, with us imperfect sinners in that community, there'll be failings on that side, but the teachings, he created a church for a reason for a place to go and find the truth that was incredibly deep and allowed us to live the life that God intended us to. And growing up, all through my years, you see so many people struggling, missing the point of life, chasing the things that never seem to satisfy, running into roadblocks of things that avoid. And, it's a shame to see people not see, what was intended for them and to kind of turn their back on the thing that's the only answer. So I felt like to write a book that did two things. That not only had a story about somebody's journey to wholeness, but but also explained the church's teachings and wove them in. Let me get that so I don't be bothered.
That's that tells you that this is really the pub, right? Where the phone rings and we get people trying to get a hold of us at the pub.
Yeah.
So
So I felt like that, there's so many younger people, especially. They're, obviously we see people leaving the church, and a lot of it because no one has ever explained to them why we teach, what the beauty is and why the answer is there in God in terms of our purpose and meaning in life and the fullness of why we're here. And as they drift away more into a secular culture, there's no place in society where they even get exposed to it. So I wanted to write a book that was kind of following Christ's example. I mean, he's always the right example for evangelization or anything. And he always
yeah.
taught wisdom through intriguing stories and very relatable characters and stories that would keep people's attention, have them relate to it. So I thought a story that really had someone's journey that you could relate to, had a lot of interest in and intrigue to it as well. But had you kind of sucked into the story and then along the way, you've got a lot of these elements I think that were worth exposing people to. And the feedback has been humbling and very amazing from people in terms of saying how much it changed their lives. So that has meant a lot.
Well, and I did read The Father's Son, and it was fantastic. And I can see where you incorporated some of your life in there as the main character, being in the finance world, and you're familiar with that. And it 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 is wonderful that you're pointing to the truth and beauty of the church, because that's one of the things as president of God Squad, we've tried to not get mired in the slinging of mud and just keep pointing to the truth and beauty of what the church is supposed to be, right?
Right.
Come, especially men, like we can argue about something for months, right? But I'm not going to convince you that the Raptors are the team to follow versus the Celtics, or the Flames versus the Bruins, right? Because you
You
very much
try.
incorporate sports in your characters, and obviously there's something about baseball in Boston because Peter Kreeft's novel had a whole chapter on it too. So
Right.
is
Actually,
is
I
it a,
had Peter for a professor as a freshman at BC. So I was lucky, and I didn't even know it at the time. But I've taken some. I went to Patrick Madrid's Apologetics Academy, and he was one of the speakers
okay?
at that. So that was great to meet them. So I think one of the things I learned along the way is, you know, I think when I was younger, I really cared about a lot of topics like abortion and things like that. But I would get very hot-headed and trying to win someone over. And I've learned along the way, and I think the church is really heading in this direction is to build intentional disciples. You have to meet people where they are. They may not even be at a point where they're even interested at all in building a trusting friendship just to begin. So they want to come to you. They get curious about your life. They start asking you a question, and you explain to them with as much as clarity and charity as Catholic Answers would say. So I learned along the way from some of these apologetics masters that are out there, really how to approach people, how to let them ask questions, how to respond in a way that's inviting rather than trying to, you know, to win on just the technical aspects. I had a friend of mine that worked for me for 17 years, and we would go out to a pub and have beers after work. And he would tell me, first of all, is don't talk about God. He'd put a hand out. I don't want to hear anything about religion or God. And I respected that, So we just built a friendship. We built trust over a very long period of time. And he'd be interested in my life, and he kind of see attractive things about what's going on there. And he ended up actually reading The Father's Son, which I didn't know if he would how he'd react to it because there is so much faith content in there. And he came back to me and said he was going to retire early and leave my staff because he wanted to go out and make something of his life. He said it changed him
Wow.
in a way. And just a response like that from someone said it made me think about things and wanting to make a difference in the world. And I think David's character had, the lost art of friendship in there was a big piece of this. Is someone to really help you along that path that you can trust, someone that comes to you as a friend versus someone to try to just, you know, convince you of something. So,
Well, and that's where I love a lot of the discussion happens in the pub, and it's a lively discussion, and the main characters are extremely interesting, and you just make it a real fellowship where it's two guys becoming friends, and that is so important. Like God Squad, we've done barbecue outreach or just trying to invite people, and then we'll worry about the evangelization once they're talking to us.
right,
And I tell people working with youth at risk where they're I had them working off community hours. We were making chili for in from the cold or something. I forget what we were raising funds for, and we were feeding like 250, 300 people chili, and the kids asking me, "How come you're smiling?" And I'm going, "I'm feeding Jesus,"
yeah,
because and it's it just it opens up those conversations because they want to know what makes you tick. They
yeah,
want, and that's where that mentorship component is so important that you talk about.
right, yeah. I would say during this process, like I said, I didn't expect to be writing books. I always thought it'd be neat when I was a teenager to write a book, but I never thought it'd be published. But I hadn't thought about it for those 30 years. I couldn't come up with a story. And as I started the process, I ended up really researching for 7 years the content that's in there. I wanted to make
Wow.
sure that I had it right. And but then when it got down to okay, now it's time to write this thing, and I just dreaded how painful this was going to be, and it ended up being more fun than I had doing anything in my life. It was so much fun, and I knew that it was the Holy Spirit that was guiding it. It was just it flowed too easily not to have that going on. So that was an experience that was awesome from this thing. And the other one is meeting the people I have met that I would have never met. So through Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance, meeting you and starting to see your ministry out there is just so uplifting and great to see, just meeting different people and seeing the work that's being done and all the corners in terms of trying to help evangelize or doing whatever we can do to bring people along to get them to heaven, hopefully.
Well, and that's what I love about the alliance is we're not competing with each other. We're enabling each other. We're supporting each other, and it's the Holy Spirit is moving in a way that I didn't fully understand, but the last couple of years there seems to be something that I'm feeling, a movement and the building of relationships, uh, whether it was on our motorcycle ride and introducing Jeff to Henri Renier, who's the head of CCO, or Father Raymond D'Souza, and the Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance. Jeff introduced me to those guys.
Yeah,
So it's interesting how all of this is working and supporting each other. And your books, I think, are going to be a great tool uh, for men, especially those that enjoy reading. And so, can I ask how old you were when you published that? Because like you say, you dreamed about it for a while, and it's something that no
yeah,
matter where you are in your life, you've got a mission.
right. So 60, I was 61. I published it 2 years ago in 2019. Um,
Okay.
I think I don't feel a lot of regret, but I do feel some regret. Is it's taken a while. You know, you're raising your family, you're really focused on that, but there's always this feeling that there's more you should be doing. You know, to really serve God for all that He does for us, and it's really having the courage to kind of jump in with 2 feet, know what that intentional discipleship is about, and trying to reach out beyond yourself to help, spread the good word. So, I get inspired when I see people like yourself doing that, and I felt moved to be able to do more of that. And like you said, this book offers a different type of resource. It's one of the things. There's a ton of nonfiction content out there that's wonderful, but a lot of people say,
Yeah.
look, I don't want to go figure out all these different books and pull it together. Can you just put it in one place, make it interesting, make it relatable? So it offers a different vehicle, as you said,
Eh,
for certain people that would never have picked up a book or even heard about it. My older brother is, he's read the book 4 times, and he said, I've never heard anyone explain marriage in a way that you maybe really appreciate to the level I had. So, people have gotten stuff out of different aspects of, they wanted to rip pages out and send it to their kids and stuff, because there's things in there delivered in a way where I think it's easy to understand, but it doesn't make it superficial. It really gets to that beauty, I think, that God intended.
yeah, and you explain it in such a way that it's very well done. It's inviting. Yeah, somebody might find themselves crying at the end of some of these books, and but no, it's really well done,
Yeah.
and I thoroughly enjoyed both books. And you said you have a third one coming out?
Actually, March 25th, a third one in the series. It's called Stolen Blessing. Um, so that include, you might be interested in there. There's a kidnapping that's in there, and then there's the title kind of has a dual meaning in terms of, the characters are in there, but the dynamics of the family. I'm really excited about this one. The story's, I think, very strong. Father Tom and Angelo come back. They've got to
Oh,
solve
they're
this
back.
mystery.
They're back, are they?
Yeah, so that's coming out in this month, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes over.
That's awesome. So one of the well, you alluded that we've been to Boston. It was a quick visit, as we were coming from Maine. In This was in the year 2000. We had 6 kids with us, and my mother-in-law, pulling the trailer through Boston, and it was quite the experience. Uh,
Where did you
and
go in
yes, I wanted to see Lynn, Massachusetts,
Maine?
just because that's where. And Michelle jumped out when we stopped at a light and locked the trailer because we didn't think we were in Kansas anymore. So,
Yeah, it is. It is a very, it's a city. It's a city that's had tough times. It's one of the, I think, the poorest cities, and but it's on the ocean. It's got 3 miles of beaches. It's just north of Boston. It should be doing better than it has been, but it certainly gave me an appreciation, because we didn't have a lot growing up, about what was important in life. And it wasn't anything you could buy. And I appreciated every second of it. So it gave me an appreciation for things. It gave me an exposure to a very diverse group of people that lived in town. So I got a lot from it. I remember when I was growing up, I'd see these guys that were 70 years old or so, and they'd be sitting at a Fourth of July picnic, having their drams and stuff, and talking about how they regretted things now that they're looking back about not paying attention to the most important things of their family and stuff like that. And I remember as a 12-year-old or whatever saying, I don't want to ever say that to myself. Like I look back and regret that I missed what was important. So it made me start thinking early through confirmation, what do I think the most important things were in life? And it's really helped to guide me in terms of staying focused on those things that meant something.
Well, and you talked about regretting waiting a bit, but you were at our conference on this weekend, focused on St. Joseph
Yes.
and that hidden life, and that's where the real action takes place is in that family where you're encouraging and growing and uh, and men need to fulfill that role uh, to change the world because like with the COVID, you're hearing about domestics and all the other stuff on the rise, and we're calling men to be real men, authentic men, loving men in the image of Saint Joseph, and that's where I appreciated, especially the Dave Kelly character, growing and learning about what that looks like. So,
Right. And how often do we hear those things about what an authentic man is all about and the strength that comes with that and what role we have versus what society's teaching us. It's something that some people have never heard before, and I think that mentorship that you talk about, that I think is in Gus Busby as a big theme, I think is so important that we have mentors out there. It sounds like you're working at a high school um, as well, so your influence at some of the younger ages can be a lot in your profession. So I highly respect what you do there and what you do, for the men's faith efforts that you're doing.
well, thank you very much. So, one of the segments I have, because a lot of our young men are struggling and figuring out, much like in your book, Gus Busby. So, what advice do you give your 18-year-old self?
I think, I had an experience at confirmation where I felt like, you get a gift from the Holy Spirit. You don't necessarily recognize it at the moment, but I think the gift was the wisdom to be able to really weed out the stuff that doesn't matter, like I said. And so when it came down to it, if you start kind of throwing out stuff, you end up with why you've got to start with God, that relationship. You've got to have a relationship with yourself that understands where your self worth comes from. It comes from God, it doesn't come from anything you do or a validation for anyone else. So you're not chasing something that doesn't work. And it comes from our relationships with others. So I think the big thing about, we're never going to be really happy until we're giving ourselves. The example I think of the Trinity is it's just total. It's always giving that love. You're passing it on. You're not looking for how you're going to benefit using somebody. So I think I think recognizing the dignity of the human person and everyone you meet, and really focusing on the important things. So to me, I wanted to keep my faith up front. I wanted a family more than anything, and I wanted to light some candles there with any of the kids we had to try to have them go out and spread the word, I think. So I just kept focused on what I thought the real priorities were, and tried to really validate that I was on the right track. And I'd hope at 18 you can develop some kind of vision for what are you here for and where you're headed. It can change along the way. I think the biggest example of that is my mother. Like I said, she's an Irish person. She had an extremely strong faith. She came down with multiple sclerosis and she was bedridden for 25 years. And she never missed a day a big smile on her face, and she said, "This wasn't what I expected, but God's got a role for me, right?" So everyone that came to her bedside, she just was there to I think to be a friend to them and to share God and stuff. So she just really showed me, how important that was in the formula, in the mix of what life's all about. So it's really helped to keep me thinking, keeping the priorities straight, not getting off the track too far. We fall all the time or whatever. So, finding people that inspire us. So I hope at 18 people start just starting to think about what those priorities are, and talking to people that, it seems like your life's working out in a way where I want some of that, right? So seeking out a mentor, I think, to help guide you as well.
Well, and we talk to young people about this in the high fidelity wraparound intervention that we were doing, was kind of what are your hopes, dreams, goals, and aspirations, and start thinking about that, and who are the people that you're going to surround yourself to make that happen. And quite often when you start looking at the people around you, they're your friends might not be the ones that are going to want you to achieve your hopes, dreams, and goals, much like you talked about in Gus Busby. And so that's great advice, and I thank you for that. Now we have another segment.
Okay.
Jeff talks about riding with your posse, Jeff Cavens, and so who are your go-to saints? Who are the ones that are with you every day?
Besides you.
Well,
um,
I'm not there yet, but
I don't know that
working out my salvation with fear and trembling.
I don't know that I've had one. I remember when I was a kid watching Beckett, the movie Beckett, and I think what struck me was when Thomas Beckett, had to make that change in life, and what he found there, the peace he found and the conviction he had to really focus on doing what was right. It had an impact on me then about having, some integrity about doing the right thing when I was younger. My mother, I call her a saint. So, like I said, her example, had a big thing. And then most recently, I hadn't really spent much time praying to Mary until, these books came up, and I had talked to Michael O'Brien, who's a writer for Ascension Press, and he said, I was asking for advice. How do I find a publisher? And he said, don't forget the power of praying. He really made that a big point, and I really stopped to do that. I really started praying to Mary, and I don't know what it was, but within 2 weeks, I had a publisher. It was like everything started happening, and it's not like it's magic, but I really felt the sense that I had missed something, not spending more time thinking and loving Mary. And then this past year, I think the St. Joseph focus is opening my eyes to thinking more about St. Joseph as an example. So those are the four people I can think of that probably as saints, I think I'd probably mention in terms of influence on me.
Well, you bring up an interesting point there. A friend of mine who just lost her father in December, and in dealing with it, like he was in his early 90s, so lived a full life, and but putting together and remembering those people that aren't canonized saints, but we believe that their life was something that we should examine and look at for that heroic Catholic example that we can pass on and share. So I thank you for sharing about your mom. That is a powerful thing that reminds us that no matter where we are, we can make a
You know,
difference. And I love the fact that you talk about her smiling, because I can just see the Irish eyes of smile.
and they did. She never complained. She had so every reason to, with everything that goes along with being bedridden and stuff like that. And You would never know it. She just said, I've got a mission, right? I got a new mission. And she kept focused on that. So I think the big learning from the Bible is trust, right? Trusting in God's loving plan for us. And Adam and Eve didn't have full trust, right? And all along the way, the Jewish people kept losing trust and breaking that covenant. And Jesus and Mary showed us that example of just full, let it go, trust in God's plan. And she just kind of followed that example in a way that will never leave me. It's meant a lot to me. So I keep her alive
Well,
in that.
when this airs, it'll be Holy Thursday, and that's in your books, the whole Easter uh, season. But you talk about that trust and the divine mercy. It comes the week after Easter, so I strongly encourage, if you watch this, to start the Divine Mercy Novena on Good Friday, and it's an extremely powerful tool for learning to trust in Jesus. And so the term, the Gaelic term for whiskey, which the origin goes back to, it's called Ishkabaha, which means water of life. And my prayer is that you and I continue to lead souls to the true water of life. And hopefully, one day soon, we can sit down across from each other and share one of
I
these.
would love that. And to all of your viewers, we'll give them a toast as well. Thank you so much, Sean. It was so great to talk to you, and I felt honored.
Thanks, Jim. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of A Dram with Friends. Like and subscribe. Go to all podcast platforms to look for it on podcast, or go to godsquad.ca to support our mission.